Frog God, Frog God.
Hi, Frog God fans. Today we are going to be doing a little preview, a little late for the Indiegogo, but we're going to be doing a talk with Patrick Lawinger up above us. Lawinger. Hi, Patrick.
Hi.
And we're going to be talking about the Hall of the Rainbow Mage, and you wrote the original, correct?
Yes, I did.
Fantastic.
It was quite some time ago. It was based on some adventures that we had in one of the campaigns that I ran, and it ended up being a very fun campaign and something that I converted when 3rd edition and D20 SRD came out. And Bill and Necromancer Games were interested in it, and one thing led to another, and became a pretty good module that I guess a lot of people have enjoyed.
Awesome. And in case you don't know by now, I'm Alice Peng, aka Lala Twiddle, and below me is Brandon Powers, my co-host.
Howdy, everybody. Pleasure to be here. And by all means, pleasure to get to talk with you today, Patrick. First, just opening this book up to see it on my PDF version, the first thing that's there is the cover. And I know that or at least I believe you're not the artist, but I hope that you had this scene that you talked about this, because this art on the front page really is absolutely fabulous. That makes me literally want to grab this book and go and find out what that scene is, whether it's as a player or read it as the GM, because you have such a the artist did a great action shot, this fantastic library, beautiful stained glass. I need to know if there's a seahorse in the module, since we have one here. And then the last thing that really strikes me, I mean, awesome enemy art that are like wood golems or maybe like wood creatures, but the cleric, it looks like, that has, the bald tonsure. And I just think that's such an awesome, iconic image that really had dropped off by the time that this book came out. And so I thought that was awesome to see.
Yeah, so usually what we did when we were doing the books then for Necromancer Games is we would give some art notes, just some kind of general ideas, and then the artist would just go with them. And as a general rule, the artwork in the book, at least the original book, was all very well done.
Yeah, it was.
And Casey Christopherson, I think, has been taking care of the art direction for the new version that they're working on. And I just have absolute faith in Casey, and the pieces of artwork that I've seen that he's put online for the new one are just going to be fantastic.
Absolutely.
But so I put some ideas in. I think, sort of one of the things that we used to do, and I'm not sure how they do it now, but kind of would have an idea of like party members, and you describe, potential party members that are going through. And some of those descriptions were based on the original gaming group that I had that had played in some of this. And they took that, I mean, in terms of the cleric and stuff like this, obviously the artists did that on their own. But it was a very fun piece to see. And it's one of those things, you always hear the don't judge a book by its cover, but I can assure you, having been involved with books and things like this in the past, and having some experience, even some Necromancer Games had some covers that weren't quite what they wanted, and the book didn't do as well. And the artwork really helps sell, at least for gaming books, it really helps sell the book.
Oh, yes. That's something that we at BWK talk about all the time. So whenever we're talking with artists and creators, we always say, when you're coming onto our show, can you give me art? I want you to bombard me with art because I want to show it off in our video, because eye candy and artwork, it evokes the ability for people to immediately immerse themselves. And you go back to, I mean, we don't have that many game books in game stores anymore, but you go back to the 80s or 90s when game stores had a ton of TTRPGs. And it's like, oh, our gaming groups felt, our campaign ended, or our campaign prematurely ended, or 2 people are missing, so we need a one-shot something. Let's go down to the game store as a group, guys. And then you just pick up a random book and go, wow, look at this art. I want to play this archer. Hey, let's take this home and just start cold reading and GMing it. And we can't, that's...
It really does have an effect. And it's fun to see. And it's fun to see some of the different artwork that we've had for different books for a long time. And I have to say, honestly, I think that one of the things that Frog God Games has done is they've just stepped up for the artwork, for the covers, for the interior art, for the Lost Lands, the world setting book, the variety of other books that they've been putting out. It's just, the artwork has just been top notch. And,
Absolutely.
You love to see that. You love to see your own book come out with that sort of artistic treatment from the art direction and the layout and everything else. And it just feels great to see that when you can.
Yeah, it adds a level of giddiness, doesn't it? You're like, oh my gosh, this feels so much more real and so much crazier because look at that. Somebody else is seeing my vision. It's a very interesting perspective.
Yeah, I mean, going back to what he was saying about the cover art for this one, I mean, when I first saw that, I was like, yeah, that was, it caught what I wanted to see way better than I could have imagined it myself, because I have no talent in that realm. And I just, love to see what artists come up with, and what some of these artists can do with minimal art notes and just, hit the mark is pretty amazing.
It is. It really is. Well, you mentioned that this is a campaign you ran, and obviously by the cover, people can tell this was originally published in the heyday of Necromancy, Sword and Sorcery D20 content, where it was just churning stuff out all the time. But can you tell us a bit about some of your favorite moments when you GM this, without trying to give too much spoiler away by necessarily?
Yeah, some of that's would involve some spoilers.
Spoiler warning. How about this? We do spoiler warning, guys. Now go ahead.
So I actually ran this several times in different situations. And when I originally ran it, would have been more, you'd considered it more first edition at the time. And initially I had an idea of, basically an illusionist that created a lot of fireworks and things like this. And I had read an article on some of the original fireworks creators in China and how some of these people were referred to as rainbow men. And so
yes,
I called him the Rainbow Mage. And that tale, basically, it was sort of a throwaway thing, trying to lead characters back into a different direction. And it was one of those things that just kind of took a life of its own. And I'm like, okay, that's what they want to do. Let's go do that. And there's certain aspects of it that honestly, that involved nature and animals or mutated animals in sort of a natural setting. And part of that was because one of the ways I DM is to try to give characters something to do. Really what I do is how I design adventures and how I design gameplay is to make them have to use their skills, to kind of force them, if you're going to be a druid and you have certain abilities, well, then I'm going to create a situation where you have to use those abilities. And so that was how certain elements of this adventure developed, is because I was giving certain characters something where, honestly, for them to succeed, they had to use those skills. And there were certain aspects later on there's a different part of this adventure where they're sort of investigating sort of a ziggurat, so a temple that's inside a massive cave. And they found in actual gameplay, the creativity that was used to overcome some of the obstacles was pretty hilarious. So there's certain traps and things that were put in when I published the article, when we went to a published version of the adventure, that I had to think to myself, I had to remember, it's like, okay, well, you got to make sure they can't just break down this wall to escape. Because there were just certain things that they would do to just say, I was like, okay, this guy's here. Well, let's just use magic to get through here. And I was like, okay, I planned for you to use magic for certain things, but I didn't think you were going to do that. But third edition actually gave me more options in terms of the D20, in terms of the types of characters that I created, like certain creatures that you run into in more first edition. It's just kind of, you created it as a brand new entire creature. Whereas with third edition, you could just sort of apply templates to a few things and create a different type of vampire to do certain things. And that aspect made it, third edition was kind of fun for me. I don't know how you guys are in the various editions and stuff like this, but I like some of the early editions. I like third edition. Then there was this thing that happened after third edition. I think they call it fourth edition. Didn't like that one. Didn't have a lot of fun with that one. Fifth edition, I have fun with. Basically, I have fun with all of the others. But that one edition in there was one that wasn't much fun for me. But third edition was fun in terms of the creativity options, adding templates to just kind of change something around and make it a little bit different. Because I think we all know that most of our players by now pretty much have the monster manual memorized. Yes. And so it's nice to have them run into something a little bit different, like the wood golems, for example, in this adventure. And certain other things are just slightly different to make them pause and think, okay, exactly how do I want to handle this?
Well, and going with that idea of something a little bit different, there's some stuff in here that absolutely screams to me, because come back in second edition, one of my absolute favorite spells is Chromatic Orb, coming from, I believe, Unearthed Arcana in first edition, and then moving over to second edition. I loved that spell, and third edition completely dropped it, and I was so unhappy with that. And here we have Rainbow Mage, and that title immediately gets me thinking. And so I come back and see new spells and feats. Here we've got Rainbow Sphere, Rainbow Staff.
I love
as other
staff.
ways that you can do it before you get to that prismatic spray. And so I was so happy to see that. And that gives you that same, here's something that you're familiar with, but it's done in a different way for you to interact with. And so I was so happy to see that.
Yeah, when we were... Go ahead. I was just saying that when we were talking about the conversion and the updates, that I wanted to make sure all those new spells and items were in there, because I am a big fan of Chromatic Orb as well, and Prismatic Spray and such. And so I wanted to make sure that the staff of the rainbow and such like that, those items, those spells were in there, because when I read them, I'm like, oh, I need to use the game.
Yeah, they were fun. And at least for my campaign, nothing was game breaking in any way. When you get to some of those more powerful prismatic sprays and stuff like this, they can be very much killer spells in the hands of the players. It's one of those things, in terms of the game design, I think people forget that the players are going to be acting more and hitting more things and doing more things than, your individual creations as the game master or the DM. You use a certain character for a certain amount of time, and then either they've been defeated or they run off, or something else happens. Whereas if you give the player characters a very powerful spell and it's highly effective, they're just going to use it over and over and over again.
Absolutely. Well,
and that's one nice thing about the Chromatic Orb, and then Prismatic Spray later on, which does have, or any of the others, which do have very game-breaking effects, but because you just grab that D8 and you roll, what did I hit them with this time? Sometimes you hit a jackpot, other times you just smacked a fire giant with a fire spell, and you're like, oh, well. That didn't work too well.
That aspect of those spells is something I've always liked. I like that the random element of it. And I don't know about you, but I've also played some campaigns where magic as a whole was somewhat chaotic. Like you had tables and you roll dice, and maybe this fireball is going to go great. And maybe you're going to fill a room full of butterflies. You just don't know for sure.
I've been gaming for, like you said, you don't know our history, but I've been gaming for over 20 years. Brandon's been gaming for over 30. But from early on, I've always been a fan of the Rod of Wonder. I'm a fan of Wild Magic. You have some great stories out of it. We had one time I was GMing a game, and one of my mages had Wild Magic issues. And he had a skunk familiar, so we decided that he could have, in second ed, Auntie's Bath. And that spell would let him bathe off the, it's like tomato bath, and therefore bathe off the skunk smell every day so his PC front and so his party members would not hate him for having a skunk familiar. Well, one day he's in there, he gets into his auntie's bath, and he rolls his wild magic to see, while he's casting the spell, and a lightning bolt strikes him in the tub.
Yeah, I mean, things like that just kind of make it fun. I think it makes it memorable for the players.
Mm-hmm.
It makes the story theirs
Mm-hmm.
a lot more than the DM. Like when I try to DM, I try to have it, like I said, try to have it theirs be the player's story.
Mm-hmm.
Try to design elements, particularly sometimes you'll hit things where you have characters that have like bizarre sets of quirks. And some editions are better and worse for some of that. And when you do that, you just try and create something where I try to make a situation where, first of all, they have to work together.
Mm-hmm.
But second of all, while working together, they have to use certain skills.
I am in complete agreement. I'm someone who likes to torture my players with making them problem solve. And I put that in quotes because, as you talked about, for the different editions, mentalities definitely have changed, especially with the growing of popularity from us being this geek little corner culture that nobody knows about to now this being very popular. And so what used to be really fun for us on the Wild Magic, well, in third edition, as later in third edition and further on, you'll notice that the Wild Magic charts got nerfed. I'll put it in the word nerfed.
Mm-hmm. You didn't have situations where the characters could mistake.
Like lightning bolt in an auntie's bath. No more of that.
Yeah. I've had characters that have literally killed characters by mistake. Just by elements of, casting an illusion on themselves to look like someone different. They're in the room where they weren't supposed to be, and the rogue, backstabs them. It's like, and you're just sitting there going, you're gonna, what? Okay.
I totally,
a backstab on a magic user tends to end the magic user pretty quickly.
Yes. I totally understand that. I'm a huge fan of Wild Magic. I'm actually currently GMing in a home game where I'm using a homebrew setting that I worked on many years ago, and they just landed on a continent, or actually on islands, where the whole setting has wild magic, and it's the civilized societies have figured out ways to basically lightning rod it to control it. So if you're performing legal stuff within cities, you're not going to suffer wild magic. Well, all of these people are city folk, and they just went into the wild, wild west. So they landed on the landmass, and immediately I said, by the way, guys, you all have wild magic flaw. And they're like, what? I'm like, I did write this in the campaign thingy. So every time they cast, they're like, shoot, am I going to get my spell off now? And I have, and only one person in my table of 6 is not a magic user.
Oh, that can make things difficult. I've usually been fairly lucky in having pretty well balanced parties.
Mm-hmm.
I've had some earlier edition games where rather than a cleric, we had a druid and a paladin, and they were able to pretty much cover the duties that were required. But undead were a bit of a problem because paladins weren't quite as good with that then. And, so that meant they, definitely investigated tombs and everything else full of undead, because that's apparently what you do when you don't have a cleric.
Absolutely. Well, we have to.
Part of it is that you want to reward the party composition that any group comes to you, but part of it is also that you want to challenge that. And it's like when somebody brings a flaw or a strength, either way, you play to that flaw or strength at times, because if I have this flaw and it never comes up, well, you don't really have that flaw. It's an unimportant aspect of your character.
Yeah,
absolutely. I totally agree. Well,
so I know Alice is going to make us close up soon. I've got 2 questions for you.
Okay.
The first one is, tell us something interesting about Hampton Hill. And the second one is, what do you want people to know about the Hall of the Rainbow Mage?
Well, okay. First of all, Hampton Hill, in the original campaign, ended up growing into a much larger city because with the disappearance of the Rainbow Mage, the player characters pretty much kind of took over that area. And again, earlier editions, there was a lot more building and things like that. So there were strongholds created there, and it became a major city for that area. And there were elements to that because of that, let's just say the Rainbow Mage came back, found a way to get resurrected, came back to life, and that campaign suddenly ran into him again. I'm sorry, the second question was
just something that you want people to know about
that I want people to know about it
in general, whether it's like kind of a cool little secret, something to look forward to, or just something from you that, it stuck with you over the years.
Well, I think one of the things that stuck with me is that part of writing these adventures and getting them to the point of publication, things like this, is sometimes a little bit of luck and a little bit of talking to the right people, going to a convention. This module ended up going through Necromancer games and things like this because I met Bill Webb and Clark Peterson at a convention, and we played a game in the back of the Ram Brewery together. Or actually, no, it was in Milwaukee. We were at this was quite some time ago, but they basically said, "Hey, let's do this." And so that adventure was an adventure for me as well, because getting into writing and publishing things, my background is that of a scientist. And when you publish papers or you do or you edit books or things like this in science, it's very different from what gaming was then, as well as what gaming is now. And so really the Hall of the Rainbow Mage, getting it written and getting it published was sort of an adventure, a personal adventure of my own.
So it gave you enough experience to get to level 2 expert game writer?
No, I wouldn't call it level 2 expert. I think that it's just still in the novice range, but I have done a lot more writing since, and I enjoy it. I have 4 children with, I'm all age ranges right here. My youngest is 13. My oldest turns 25 soon. So I've had a lot of things going on in the past few years, so I haven't been writing as much, but there's some things I've been working on, and I enjoy the writing. And the guys at Frog God Games, are particularly Bill Webb, are always like, yeah, right, just write. So, it's been very fun for me, and it's been a development. I think that everybody needs to, in life, try to take steps that are a little bit less comfortable, and it helps you develop as a person, and honestly helps you meet new people and find out new things about yourself as well as the world around you.
Absolutely agree with you. And yes, Bill collects people. I had a very similar experience to you where, it was completely unexpected, and suddenly I was part of the Frog God team. I'm part of the Frog God family out of nowhere. So it just happens. And I think that it's a really great group of people. And once again, meeting you are once again showing that it's another great person in the family. So.
Well, thanks. You guys are fun too. This was a very nice talk. I appreciate it.
Well,
we appreciate you. We'd love to have you come and throw some dice with us sometime.
Yes, please.
That would be fantastic.
Awesome. Well, thank you once again, Pat, for coming on. It was very nice meeting you and talking with you, and looking forward to seeing what the conversion fully looks like when it gets all published with all the new art and everything.
I'm looking forward to it too.
Awesome.
I'm looking, particularly the artwork and everything else that Casey's been doing on it.
Mm-hmm. Casey does a great job with the art team. So fantastic. Right. Thank you for watching, everyone.
Thank you.
And keep an eye out for Hall of the Rainbow Mage. It just finished on Indiegogo. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, Frog God fans. Thank you so much for watching us today. Do you want to see more content? Make sure you subscribe and click that little bell button to be notified.
Don't forget to leave a comment about the content that you want to see on the channel. And if you want to keep up with Frog God Game releases, check out the links in the description below for Facebook, Twitter, and Discord.
And if you want to see more content from Brandon and myself, check us out on Babies with Knives podcast, where we focus on character creation, crash courses, and actual plays for a wide variety of tabletop role-playing games.
And everybody, remember, have fun in the pond.